So good morning and welcome to another Out of the Bubble Live. And it's Tuesday morning, and actually this morning I am on a train to Birmingham going to a casting. So it looks like life is slowly getting back to normal again for me, which I'm really excited about. So I had the pleasure of talking to today's guest earlier last week and recorded it for you. So I am delighted to finally get to meet Sarah Lister, who is all about the adventure.com, and we met through a networking enterprise collective group, and that's why networking is so fantastic, because otherwise I would never have come across Sarah. So welcome, Sarah, this morning.
Good morning. Good morning from the Peak District.
Oh, how is it? How's lockdown been for you?
Well, I've just been spending loads of time outdoors, so I'm very lucky to live in Edale, which is basically the lower part of Kinder Scout. So I've been out running and walking and spending a lot of time with my partner who's on furlough. And to be honest, I wasn't really doing a lot of my own projects and things for the first couple of months, but since the lockdown has eased, I've been starting to do a bit more creative work, let's say. I feel like I'm more in the mood for it now.
Well, as I said, we met on the Enterprise Collective group, which has been great. Do you do a lot of networking, or is that kind of your first experience of that kind of group?
Well, I used to. So before I even went freelance or self-employed, I used to go to every networking event that I saw, and I found it really exciting, to go and meet people and see how they were doing things, and maybe learn new things, find new opportunities. And I put all my energy into it. But then I got to a stage where I just felt like I was spending all my time networking and not actually doing and working on my own things. I think it was almost a bit of an excuse to not actually work on my things, and I felt like I was doing something by talking to people, but actually it was almost like a really nice distraction. So these days I spend more time saying no to networking events and saying yes. But there are the odd couple of events or groups that I really enjoy being part of. But I do tend to try and focus in on my own creativity and projects these days. I also really value my free time as well when I'm not working. I like to be outside. So if someone says to me our networking event is outside in nature, then I'm probably more likely to be there.
Yeah. And for anybody that doesn't know you and what you're about, how do you describe yourself?
So I am a career coach. So I help people by asking questions to open up a new way of thinking about career change. So it takes the focus away from CVs and job hunting and that kind of, hunched over the computer saying, how do I change my career and my lifestyle, asking those big questions at a desk. And I sort of move those conversations outside and invite a more creative and a much broader approach that isn't just what job should I do, but how do I want to spend my time, and what do I want to focus on as my creative work, those kind of questions. And I'm pretty outdoorsy. I love spending time outside in the Peak District, and I love going to the Lake District occasionally as well, which I was doing a bit of last year and before lockdown. And yeah, I'm not creative in the sense that I'm an artist or anything, but I think I'm a creative thinker.
Yeah.
And although I do have an adventurous side, I also have quite a quiet and shy side. So doing things like this, I get quite nervous about. I'm not used to kind of putting myself out there to do this sort of thing. So yeah, I'm quite there's like two different sides to me. I'm on the cusp of like Cancer and Leo, and I definitely have those two like sides of my personality.
But thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Now you've said that, I will be really kind to you. do you like taking yourself out of your comfort zone though? Have you found that that's where you grow?
Definitely. So when I was younger, when I was at school, I was incredibly shy. I was always the one who was sat in the corner hiding from the teacher, literally just praying that they wouldn't ask me to say anything or read anything out or anything like that. And I've always, like, my tendency is to kind of shrivel up and go, oh, I don't want to be, in the public eye or at the center of attention. But then there's this other side of me that pushes me to get out of that comfort, and yeah, it's like I feel like it's inside me, like it pushes me to do it, even though I get really nervous and even though I find it challenging. And it's the same with adventures as well. So I love adventures that feel safe as such, so in places that I already know, that maybe I don't need to navigate, but I've taken some navigation courses with a company that's local, and that's pushed me to learn, and that opens up the landscape. So there's like places even locally that I didn't know were there because I've been looking at a map and exploring with other people and learning. So yeah, there's definitely something in me that makes me do it, even though I find it really challenging sometimes. And sometimes I put it off for quite a long time and I find excuses, and like I was saying before with networking and things like that, but eventually I sort of come round to it. And yeah, I never find it really easy, but it just makes life more exciting and it makes me feel more alive.
I'm exactly the same. I've been putting off doing the Zoom kind of interviews and the live interviews for my podcast for months. And I knew it was something I really wanted to do, but I just didn't have that kind of thing inside me that something was stopping me. So lockdown really forced me out of that, which has been great because actually it's made life so much easier, and it's been really fun to connect with people this way through lockdown. So it is, I think everybody has that little bit in them. It's just pushing past it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you feel it, like if it keeps nagging at you, then I think you know that you need to do it. I think if it's just like a drifting idea that you don't really care about, or you feel like you have to do or should do because some entrepreneur has told you to do it, then it's different. But I think when you really feel it inside and every day you're thinking about it, then I think that's like a sign. And I think it's just about breaking it down into like the smaller steps, so that you're not necessarily thinking of like the end product or the success of it, but I think if you're just working on it because you really want to do it and just taking those little tiny steps, then yeah, I think eventually your confidence gets better and you start to really enjoy it rather than feel quite so nervous maybe.
Yeah. Well, what led you to be a career coach and mentor? What's your journey? What was your background before this?
Well, I never really knew what I wanted to do. I went travelling when I was 18. I went on a gap year and I just basically saved up. I worked in a nursing home on £4 an hour and saved up to travel around the world. So I went travelling and then I came back and I sort of said, I just want to travel for the rest of my life. I don't care about anything else. I just want to go and see the world, meet people, have fun. And then my parents were kind of like, well, that's not really a career plan. Like you're probably gonna, maybe not have a great time with working if you don't get a degree and, kind of continue your education. So they persuaded me to go to university. And then for about 10 years, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I still had this idea of travel and things in my mind. But I just didn't know how or what to do, how to use those skills that I had in a travel context or in an adventure context. So I just went into loads of different jobs that were particularly interesting. And eventually, I think I was just past my kind of 30-year mark when I said, right, I really need to start thinking about this, because I was just drifting. I was literally I wasn't, even in my free time, I was just drifting. I didn't know what I wanted to do or where I wanted to be. So I was like, okay, I need to do something about this, and started kind of looking for groups that might talk about that kind of thing in London. And eventually I came across a meetup with a career coach who was who had actually travelled over from Malawi. So that's where she lives, but she used to live in the UK. So she would come over and do these talks about careers and changing your lifestyle. And there was just something about her that I just kind of went, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I live in an amazing country and have this beautiful lifestyle and just spend a few hours, talking to people each day and enjoying life? So I signed up to her coaching program, and that's where it all began.
Wow.
And during that time, during our coaching sessions, I came round to the idea that maybe I could actually become a coach. And eventually I did some training and just started practicing. And it's taken a long time for me to develop my own ideas about how I want to work. So initially, you kind of told certain ways that you might work as a coach, but I've kind of developed my own feeling about what I want to, how I want to work with people, how I want to help them. So I've taken lots of information and learning from different people, and I've got a few years of experience now. So now, so I sort of feel more comfortable with how I work now.
Yeah. So what led you to because I love the fact that you're really outdoor based. And I live in Yorkshire. I'm surrounded by beautiful countryside. And so I know the kind of therapy that is out there in nature. So I can completely understand the connection between what you're doing and the outdoors. But how did you come to that? Has it always been a passion of yours, being outside and nature?
It was when I was younger. So I grew up on a farm in Norfolk. I'm originally from Yorkshire, but I moved to Norfolk when I was 4 years old. Right. And my mum would, excuse me, my mum would always take us out walking. So even if we were, just being lazy kids, she always wanted us to be outside walking the dogs. And I actually really loved it, and I loved playing outside. We were the sort of kids who were, always being dragged in to go and have dinner, or out of the snow. We'd play out on anything. We'd be out on our mountain bikes or whatever. And we had so much freedom. We were so lucky to grow up on a farm. So yeah, definitely in my younger years. And then as I got older, I maybe drifted away from that a little bit, and I was a bit more attracted to going into the city and things like that. When I was in London, I definitely started to drift away from spending time outside for a few years. I got very wrapped up in just sort of working, and I'd walk around Greenwich Park, and things like that. But I certainly didn't travel anywhere to go and walk or anything like that. So there are a few years where I think I was actually probably at quite a low point where I wasn't really enjoying life, and I didn't have the confidence to go and do stuff like that. And maybe my attention was on other things. But then it was actually through walking and joining meetups in London and getting out of the city. We used to get on a train in a big group of like 50 people and go hiking for the day, and sit in a pub and all get back into London that night. So almost like we'd been on like a little secret adventure. It was really fun. And it was by doing that it reconnected me with my love for the outdoors. And I kind of felt like, God, what have I been doing with my life? Like, why have I been so work obsessed and just living in the city? And then I set up my own meetup group, and I thought that I would probably become a hike leader. That was like the most obvious thing to kind of go with. But I did enjoy leading walks in London and just outside, sort of down south. But I felt like I actually wanted to, any free time that I wanted to spend out on my own exploring. So it was nice to bring it to other people, but I didn't want to do it as a career. And I sort of felt like I could add something to it if I did spend time with people outside. I find managing groups quite challenging. I really admire people who do that, to be able to navigate and to know the way for a hike, and also engage with each member of the group that you're with. I think that is such an amazing skill that takes a lot of practice, and I think you have to really want to do it to be able to do it well. So I just thought, actually, I don't think that's quite for me. So that's why I started exploring other career routes. And then I thought, well, I can still spend time with people outside, but on a one-to-one basis, and not kind of selling it as a trip with these big groups or anything, but just taking conversations outside and kind of bringing a deeper level to what I wanted to create.
So how does it work? How does the session work? Do you just go out for a walk? Because obviously people are at different levels, aren't they, to being exposed to outdoor life. So do you just tailor it per client?
Yeah, I do. I mean, during lockdown, obviously, I've just moved all of my coaching online.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I mean, they're not full day hikes or anything. I have done maybe a couple that have been bigger days, but generally an hour or two I find is enough for a coaching session. I mean, for some people it works really well to have like half a day or a full day, but it's quite intense. And actually I think after maybe an hour or two, people kind of need their own space to go and think, and I think it can be a lot to do. So generally it's an hour or two, and it's at a slow pace. Sometimes if you're going uphill, it can be quite good because it brings a kind of different energy to the conversation. But it's not a hiking expedition. It is just a walk outside, and try and fit in a bit of time for sitting and maybe like having a flask of tea or coffee or something. And it's more about the conversation than the hike, but I just think that conversations outside bring out a different side of people than if you're sitting down in a cafe or something. It opens people up, and I think it also really helps with conversations to flow. I think that that openness of the landscape and the expanse and the fresh air and the wind and all of like nature's elements can all interact with the conversations. So it's simple, but I think the impacts can be really positive and really huge. And the reason that I know that is because it helped me so much to spend time outside. And although I was having online conversations with my coach who was based in Malawi, I still spent a lot of time outside in between, and that's where I went to think and to write and to meet new people and to have new experiences. So it was just like I knew that the skills of coaching could just work so well with taking those thoughts and conversations outside.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. What kind of age group do you have? Is it older people? Because like even you changed careers in your 30s. Do you find it's older clientele?
It's a whole range. I've worked with I mean, to be honest, I don't actually know the age of most of the people that I've worked with, but I'd say probably between 30s to 50s. It's quite a wide age range, and I work with both men and women. Lately I've been working with more women, but I don't try to appeal to anyone in particular. I know that when I first started my coaching training and sort of business training, it was all about, you need to find your niche and you need to create this kind of personality of a person you want to work with. And of course, I played with that and I thought about that. But I think actually what my kind of thing is that I really enjoy offering is that I like to make it what I feel is affordable to people. So I paid thousands of pounds for coaching, and I took out a loan, and it took me a long time to pay that off. And I'm not saying that it wasn't of value, because I couldn't even put a price on it basically, but I just want to make it affordable for people who are maybe, you know, who do have big financial responsibilities. And I think that's where my coaching is maybe a bit different, and it doesn't change the value of it. It's just that I don't want money to block people from you know, just having these amazing conversations that can bring so much.
That's so good, because you're absolutely right. And if you think about it, it's logically, it is quite often a time when people do come to a financial kind of crux that they do need to make some massive lifestyle and career changes. So to know that there is somebody out there that can accommodate them is really unique, because it doesn't happen very often. You know, I know that therapy and counselling and coaching sessions usually are really quite expensive. And
Yeah.
people tend not to go to them because they think immediately they can't afford it. But actually, to have a career mentor, I wish everybody would have a career mentor, because I think it's so important, because we do all drift along quite often without a plan. Do you find that people always need permission to think that they can change their lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I remember I always say to people, because it just sticks in my mind so much, that I used to, you know, sit on the 10th floor of a big building in London at my desk doing work that was so boring. And I used to just look out the window, and I just used to dream and imagine what else life could be like, and wonder why I was there, like why I had created myself to be in that position.
Yeah.
And I would just dream and imagine and just think, well, like why am I doing this to myself, and how can I get out of here? And you know, the first initial response is, well, I'll just look for another job. But that is, you know, that can be so, like, it's just not very inspiring. Like the whole process of it, it's trying to find a way out. It's like sort of scrapping away to get out of something, but not having the space and the time to think, well, you know, what else could there be? So I think it's for people who are like just asking why, you know, why am I here? Like, you know, is this it? Oh, that's what I used to always think, and it's something I hear all the time. Like, is this it? Like, I've been, you know, I've spent how many years in school? I've worked really, really, really hard. I work really hard in my company. Does anyone really care? Like, is this it? Is this what life is about? And it's those kind of questions that prompted me to, you know, to go from, oh, this isn't great, to, well, what else could there be? And it's almost unbelievable now looking back. Like, you know, it's I think it's just when you feel that inner thing of like something like kind of nagging at you, saying, well, I thought that life was going to be more exciting than this.
Yeah, I completely relate to that. I remember turning 30 and thinking, gosh, you know, and I had a great family, I was really happy, but I just thought, is this it? Is this all I can offer in the world? And is this going to be like this for the next 10, 15, 20 years? And yeah, you just don't know what's around the corner. But what advice could you give to people that need to take that step out of their bubble of the world that they're in now if they want to change it?
I think, firstly, pay attention to those questions that are coming up in your mind. So I mean, with coaching, it is just about asking people questions, and sometimes it can help to have someone else, you know, a coach who doesn't give advice, who can just prompt questions maybe in a different way. But I think you can also do it yourself, you know, so it's not as complicated as you might believe. So I used to try and overcomplicate it all, but if I'd actually just sat down with my questions and explored them, then I could, you know, I think I could have eventually got somewhere with it. So I think it's maybe like taking the questions that are in your mind to paper, and going outside for a walk and just exploring answers, like just writing and saying, well, you know, I'm not happy with this, so what do I want my life to be about? Who do I want to help? Who do I want to work with? What opportunities could I explore? Who can I connect with that would light me up, you know? Even just really simple questions like, I mean, I remember my coach in our first session together, and she asked me, she set me a task to write down all the things I enjoy, and all the things that I know that I don't enjoy. And the not joy list was much easier than the joyful list. And I remember just that sinking feeling of not knowing what I enjoyed, which seems ridiculous now. I mean, I could, reel off millions of things that I enjoy, but take like 4 years ago or so, I was so stuck with that question, and that just made me feel really sad that I couldn't even express what I enjoy. So that was what I started with, which is so simple. It sounds incredibly simple, but that was a giant first step for me. So
I think it's so relatable. I think so many people will be able to relate to that, because we get so lost in our lives that we've created. We're so busy working and juggling families and friendships that you don't often stop and think and give yourself time to really do the things that light you up inside. And so you lose it and you forget about it. I know that's one thing I really enjoyed the last kind of 10 years is refinding those things that I used to love that I'd lost along the way. So I think it's probably very common, isn't it?
Yeah, and that I was the same. So because I was stuck with the question, I was prompted to think about what I used to enjoy. So, and that was being outside and growing up on a farm and being around farm animals and all those kind of things. So yeah, I think sometimes that can help with that question: is what did I used to enjoy, before I got so serious about life?
Yeah. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
You know what? Nothing springs to mind. I think.
I'll let you have a think about it whilst we're talking, and if something comes to mind.
Yeah, because I think these days I tend to not that I mean, of course I read things, I watch things. I'm not saying that I don't absorb any advice, but I feel much more independent in my thinking now.
Yeah.
And not in a sense that I know better for anybody else.
Yeah.
But I sort of trust that I know what's best for me. And that's like a daily practice. So yeah, I'll have a think about it.
So I know that obviously you've been coaching online and you've still been able to keep your business going, but you've also started your own podcast as well. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so this is another thing that I was delaying for a long time. I'm actually writing a blog post about it now because I think it's really interesting how I have this tendency to do that. So I have an idea and I spend all my time thinking about it, but then actually doing it, I tend to quite often delay. And I think it's partly because I'm always kind of waiting for the perfect thing. So, the perfect way to record it, or the perfect time to release it, the time that I feel that I'm okay with listening to my own voice being recorded. And also because I'm interviewing people on my podcast who I really respect and who I really want to represent in a really professional way. Which feels like quite a big responsibility, because I'm sort of bringing them onto my platform. So yeah, it's kind of loaded with all these nerves and worries, and it sometimes just seems easier to just put it aside and go, oh, that's a nice dream, something I'll do one day. But I've been, over the past few years, I've been taking the little steps of experimenting with it, from recording into my phone with a really cheap microphone to going to a studio in Sheffield and recording with guests. But I still was delaying releasing it, and partly was because of lockdown, because it didn't feel like a good time to be saying I'm launching something, and obviously being respectful of other people. So yeah, and eventually I just came around to decide to actually release it, because again, I've had this feeling inside that it's something that I want to do so much, because I feel like with social media or writing blog posts, I just feel like there's a kind of limit to how much time I want to spend online, talking about things that I think matter, such as a different approach to career change. So I just think that creating a podcast and bringing other people into those conversations, and sort of people providing examples of how they've changed their life around, I just thought it was a much, I don't know, just something a bit unique to explore. So because, you know, I listen to podcasts and I really enjoy them. I'm much more likely to listen to a podcast than I am to sit there for 15 minutes reading something, partly because I can do other things, such as washing up or cooking or something, while I'm listening to podcasts. So yeah, it's something that I've been sort of playing around with, and now I've released 2 episodes. I've got 2 more to release, a couple more to record, and then I'm going to start a new series, which will be more local. So my first series is interviewing people who have a connection with Sheffield, sometimes the Peak District as well. So, but I want for this one, I want to bring in a more local feel. And what's prompted that is because the podcast studio is closed since the lockdown. So it's kind of prompting me to get my own podcast set up and start recording it myself, rather than going to a studio, which suits me fine, because I can record outside and have the sounds of nature around me. It's like, you know, it's a dream. And
how can people find it? What's it called?
It's called About the Adventure, and it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's also on my website. And I'll keep adding it to other places that people listen to.
I should go and look that up, because I love listening to podcasts, and I think, like, especially when I'm out walking the dog, I think it's just such a great way to listen and learn about things, but just being outdoors, it's great. So I shall look that one up. So I can't wait to get back to kind of longer walks with clients and getting back to, how far off being back to normal do you feel work-wise?
Well, I mean, before the lockdown, I was actually going to Sheffield quite a lot, and I was starting to go to Manchester, partly for to work with people, but also it became a bit of a habit, that kind of like going out, coffee culture again, sort of distracting myself, going, oh yeah, I've got this meeting, I'm going to see that person. So I think during lockdown, I'm actually thinking I want to spend even more time here in Peak District, and move a lot of my meetings and things online, otherwise inviting people to Edale, you know, to come for a walk and get out of the city. So I don't think I will be going back to what was normal before lockdown. I think that the ways that I've discovered of working now are much more enjoyable. And I love, you know, I think Sheffield's an amazing city, but I just don't think cities are really for me.
Nice to go, but always nice to come home.
Exactly, I always feel a sense of relief, and, you know, to think that I used to live in London, I mean, I can't even believe that now. I don't know how I got through 6 years in London. London, again, beautiful city, and I was so lucky to live right next to Greenwich Park. I mean, I would never complain about it in a million years, but I just don't know how I lived there. It's like a different world now.
Well, listen, I know we have planned to go for a lovely long walk and do some wild swimming, but obviously lockdown changed that. But I can't wait until we can get that in the diary at another point, so we can meet in person. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It's been really interesting. How can people find you on Facebook and social media and your website?
So probably the best place to go is my website, and you can find all the links. But my business name is About the Adventure, the same name as my podcast. So I'm on. I'm not on Facebook, but I'm on Twitter and Instagram. So
fabulous. I'll put all that on the notes at the end of this. But have a fantastic rest of the week, and lovely to talk to you. And hopefully we'll meet again in person soon. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Thank you.